with a good person.
Oh, well.
Hey.
Hi, everybody.
Hey. Oh, hey. Hello
Hey,
there.
horses.
I didn't see you there.
So before we begin, everybody, we know that this is the off weekend, but we decided that since
We're in charge and we set the rules and we can do it whenever we want to.
Do we want? Yeah.
Sorry,
So-
Michael. Go ahead.
So we decided that we would do an hour-long show this Saturday because Chris Miwa of Chasing 80s Toys and Jody at Gen X Geek Toys, Gen X Toys Geek, sorry, sometimes I transpose those two words. They are doing a special live stream at 3 p.m. to talk about the new crew that they've got at Chasing 80s Toys.
They have a new crew?
They have a new crew.
What's this?
I know, it's pretty exciting.
I'll have to tune in and
So
find out.
we thought, well, even though it's the off Saturday, we would do a hour-long stream discussing classic comic strips. And then at the end of it, we make it an hour long. And at the end of it, everybody hopefully can go over and watch the Chasing 80s Toys / Gen X Toys Geek live stream.
Do we say who the new speakers are?
I think it's already been announced, sort of.
has.
Yeah.
So Scuba and
Jeff.
Jeff, yes.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yep.
Michael, I thought we were talking about adhesive medical strips today instead of comic strips.
No, we're talking
God,
about.
I would be super qualified to
We're
talk
talking about
Do you
comic
have a
strips.
favorite type of adhesive medical strip?
Tegaderm is my favorite.
Really? Where can I find
Holy-
this Tegaderm?
Smokes. That's a real thing?
Yeah.
So
It's got the word skin in
I
it,
also
so you
want
know
to
it's
thank
good.
Tim and I did a Patreon unboxing last week, and Tony Rowland sent this surprise custom created actual comic strip accurate Hobbs, and I was blown away by that. So I found out that Tony wasn't a patron, so he didn't see the unboxing. So if Tony's watching right now or sees it later, this is the awesome Hobbs that he sent us. So I thought it'd be very appropriate
I
to
agree.
have it
I think it's
on the
very
thing.
appropriate.
Yeah. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to John Boldry for sending those awesome Advanced Dungeons and Dragons figurines. Thank you so much. Those are going to go into the display case, and we're going to show those off. All right. Now, comic strips.
Oh my God, comic strips. Michael, you go.
Okay, so as a child, I will freely admit that I found the weekday newspaper comic strip section underwhelming and disappointing.
Very underwhelming. But Sunday.
Oh, Sunday.
I just like to picture child Michael like cracking open the newspaper, just
Mm-hmm.
like
Throwing out the sports section.
financials and business and ooh, comics.
One of the earliest photos of me is me reading the newspaper in diapers. That's
He knew from early on he wanted to go into journalism.
He wanted to go into journalism and diapers.
to that end.
Very dapper diaper.
I was happy to see some of our comic strips in the weekly newspaper, even though they were always black and white at that point. But I was waiting for the Sunday strip.
When they were in color.
Yes.
3-color. I think it was 3-color printing.
Yep.
So
yeah. Do you know that there's a funny bit of trivia about that? That's why Dick Tracy's hat is yellow. Because in the late 20s and the early 30s, when they were perfecting newspaper color, they only had so many colors to work with, but yellow was a new color.
No, Michael, haven't you seen the movie? It's very literally yellow.
Yellow was
literal.
I know, but yellow was the new color. And so they
wanted
said, we want to showcase this new color, so make his hat and coat
Yellow.
The comic strip's great, but you know what's better? Yellow.
Is it yellow or yellow?
Yellow.
Yellow.
I
no
think you're
longer-
yellow.
It used to be cowardly to be yellow, but now
yellow belly.
Now in newspaper strips, it's brave to use the color yellow.
Jody says that he is having some issues, but he'll try to join the stream soon. No worries, Jody.
No
Don't worry
worries,
about
Jody. You just do your thing.
I blame you, Jody. It's all your fault.
So people are yelling out all their favorite things. So do you want to start going through all of the ones that we're going to talk about?
Sure. Now, there were licensed comic strips back then. They played in different markets. So like every time I would go visit my grandparents, they had the better newspaper in Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis had all the cool comic strips in it that I didn't get in Nashville. Their Memphis paper ran Spider-Man, and Dick Tracy.
See, I never got any. I got Dick Tracy, but
We
no
didn't
Spider.
have
We
that either.
never had Dick Tracy in Nashville.
We never had Dick
Nashville's
Tracy.
market was lame.
I had Dick Tracy, but no Spider-Man. I
Try
didn't even know
Enterprise.
that was a thing.
I remember seeing Superman in
didn't
markets
get
that were
that either.
outside, but never in Nashville. Nashville's was all just the ones we all kind of remember, you
It's
know?
crazy.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
yeah.
I didn't say anything.
Oh, so Star Wars was one that was in comic strips for a while.
Which
That's been
again,
I never saw that one. Been reprinted. Star Trek was
Yeah.
one, and from what I understand, in England there was a Doctor Who newspaper comic strip for a while.
Not only that, but there was a James Bond comic strip that was published in England as well in certain papers. So you could follow through his Casino Royale adventures was the example that I found. And it was just a nice black and white little drawing of, storyboarded out what happens in Casino
Were
Royale.
they funny?
I doubt they were very funny.
I mean, was it like, you said your name is what?
He's like, Bond! Jimmy Bond!
I was
And
thinking
there'd be
more
a little
pussy
song.
galore,
There'd
but
be a little song
whatever.
After that. My
Um,
name's James Bond.
who's the bad guy in the comic strip?
I forgot the guy's guy's name.
Grindhead Jim says Jill/Suze, don't know what that means, and I are actually considering a Sunday only print subscription to our local paper just for the comics based on the stream. So thank you.
Look at that. We're actually helping out the dying newspaper industry right now.
I mean,
I'm all for it. So yeah, in 1958, continuing through 1983, they published James Bond, which consisted of 52 story arcs that were syndicated in British newspapers, 7 of which were initially published abroad.
Wow. Wow.
no idea.
A World Made of
Completely
Cardboard says Farside, Garfield, Michael hugging Hobbs for the win.
Yes, Garfield for sure.
that would have been an interesting Bond title for an adventure.
Michael hugging dogs.
Ink finger. He's the man who's turning the newspaper pages.
Wicked
Oh.
Person says denied comic books by fundy parents as a child. A 10-year-old wicked person in 1980 was delighted that the weekly newspaper had Spider-Man, Star Wars, Star Trek, and Conan
Oh,
every
you must
day.
have had a good one.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
right.
to have all of
Forgot
those.
about Conan. That was
Yeah.
That would have been a great comic to have. Unfortunately, Nashville was totally pablum.
I was fixing to say, yeah, Alabama, no.
You know what would have made a really good comic strip is Dragon Ball Z. They never really got to the story anyway. It would have just been
Yeah.
a perfect one for a daily comic
Just them
strip.
powering up in every little square.
Right.
I think
Do you
3
know
of the
what would have
panels
made a
be
great
last.
comic strip?
What?
The TV show Lost.
Yes.
There you go, J.J. Abrams. That was your true calling. I'm sorry. You were born a little too late.
Yeah.
Master Son says, hello from Texas. I am with some G.I. Joe collectors for a swap. Hope all is well in your area.
Hello,
Good
G.I.
luck.
Joe collectors.
Yes.
I hope your swap goes swimmingly.
Knowing is half the swap.
Scott says, hardbound collections of The Far Side and Calvin and Hobbes are on my shelf next to Shakespeare and Homer, where they belong.
That's
Wow.
true. Yeah.
Where's the alien?
That's weird. That's a weird.
I used to, the
juxtaposition.
biggest thing I remember in the late 70s was using the silly putty.
To pull it off back.
And then
To-
stretch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it would work perfectly and then go away. I mean, I used to do that all the time.
Yeah.
So
King Eric says there should have been a Smokey and the Bandit comic strip. That actually kind of would have worked, I think.
I think you're right. That would have been a good one.
I did have a problem with the more realistic comic strips, not because they were realistic, but because things like Mary Worth and Brenda Starr, they were always in the middle of something that I had no idea what was going on, and you only got 5 panels, and so it
Yes.
never really went anywhere.
Right.
And it was like, what?
And then you got one a week
Yeah.
sometimes. So literally after 52 weeks, you'd have 2 minutes of dialogue.
yeah, right.
So it's like,
Is he ever gonna go through that door?
They've just had a really long phone conversation.
Yeah.
That's basically all you get.
little orphan Annie's been underwater for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh my God, she was the one with the blank eyes.
Yes.
Yes.
Those white blank
Ooh.
eyes.
Those dead eyes.
So you cut all those out and hung them up, didn't you?
Mhm.
Yes.
All right. So I saw you pull up some of the comics there. So I figure we'd show off some of the strips.
Well, they're alphabetical, so you just tell me which one you'd like me
Okay.
to pull up.
Let's go with one of my personal favorites from the 80s growing up was Hagar the Horrible.
Really?
That was actually in my market. I loved Hagar the
Yes,
Horrible.
he was good.
I think it was because one, I loved, every kid loved knights and Vikings, and it had that look to it, you almost wished it was a cartoon when we were kids. Like, it's like, I wish Hagar the Horrible was a cartoon.
Yeah, I
You
think
know?
some of those comic strips became cartoons, but like Family Circus.
Yeah.
Didn't they do some?
They
cartoons
tried,
of
but
that?
like
I mean,
Family Circus was the worst one. Like,
well, it was
to
weird.
turn into a cartoon. Like,
Well,
really?
it was Stewie before Stewie existed, right? Because their heads were oval like Stewie's.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
I mean, Hagar doesn't age super great. I don't know if you've read a lot of Hagar recently, but
Not
it's,
recently, no.
it's I saw some of it as I was looking for something that I could actually put on the screen.
What was it? Dragging a woman back to the cave?
It's a lot of, heavy misogyny in that comic. But it was of the time. So.
And the Vikings tried to invade Scotland a lot. And today I'm trying for the first time Iron Brew, thanks to Evander, sending this.
Brew.
So I'm going to open this right now.
It's brewed from iron.
As a tribute to Evander.
I'm telling you don't need more iron, Michael. You're a dude.
A tribute to Scotland and a tribute to Hagar the Horrible, even though he invaded the Scots. I'm going to drink this right here.
It looks like Crush. Orange Crush.
It looks like, I was going to say,
Yeah.
is it like Faygo? I don't really understand. Is it orange flavored
Or Fanta.
or just orange color?
Wouldn't it be disturbing if it was like Dr. Pepper flavored?
It's got a bite to it.
Can I
Does
can I
it?
taste it?
Yeah.
It's not bad.
It's the coffee of sodas.
No,
you're
it's
used to.
no, it tastes
You
like
want to put some creamer in it?
it doesn't really taste like orange. It tastes like bubble gum. It's like bubble
Oh,
gum
it's like
soda.
those Millions. Is that what it's
Well,
like?
Yeah, because those were Iron Brew flavor. Yeah.
Brian Dillingham says Foxtrot. Still remember one with the Millennium Falcon crashing into DS9 and through the wormhole, only to be found by Mulder and Scully driving Kit. I don't really know what that means.
really
but
busy comic strip. Is all I'm gonna say.
probably
There's a
would've-
lot going
I
on.
probably would have been like, just one of those ideas is cool.
Bet you can't do that. in
somebody
5
was
panels.
doing cocaine, and they were like, "And what about this?"
Didn't they go through the portal?
Someone
Someone
brought up Andy Capp. And,
yeah, we have
I
some of
don't-
those.
I don't know
Um,
much about Andy Cap.
I don't
I
know that, but I'm
recognized
going to
him.
pop
I
it up on
loved
the
Andy
screen.
Cap.
Yeah, he was.
I
I
kind
was
of
a lot.
recognize him from the look. Like he's got the,
What kind of hat
Well,
is that?
and
Like,
if
is that a
you-
hat I could buy?
Isn't that called a? It's not a derby, but
No, it's like what Cagney used to wear.
Yeah, I'm
It's,
trying to remember what they call that.
Yeah.
There's a name for it. It's that's a throwback to a Scottish, like a golf cap
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
I can't remember. So can we talk about tone?
Yes, we can.
whoa, holy crap.
What
Hold
the
your
what?
Tom, I think
What the what?
what Tim said, can we talk about Tony? Is what Tim
Oh,
said.
Tony,
What?
you didn't have to do that.
Yeah, seriously, dude.
Dude, Tony. First of all, we love you to death, and I'll stay in the trenches with you till the end of time. But you did not have to do that, sir. That is very kind of
It's
you.
very kind.
We should have had Tony because I'd love to know what kind of comic strips they had in Australian newspapers.
The only reason that I'm not going to worry about that level of generosity too much is that more than likely it will end up being used to ship something to.
I
him.
was fixing to say y'all send stuff back and forth so
Yeah.
often. I mean,
We're just trading money back and forth at
right.
this point.
It
so
really,
it's-
I'm pretty sure you guys are just like two bank accounts in the same bank. Like,
Tony, what are you doing up at 2 a.m.?
He's
watching
Tony.
us.
He's Tony.
He's watching
Um,
us on his TV.
So I want to talk about Calvin and Hobbes, or I want somebody to tell me about it because I've never really been into it. So since
Okay.
you've got him, I've got this. I pulled this little.
Uh-huh.
Everyone knows who Calvin and Hobbes are, even if you've never, like me, if you've never read a Calvin and Hobbes
Yes.
comic strip, you know who they are.
So Calvin and Hobbes, the premise is that Calvin is this imaginative, daydreaming, hyperactive little kid, and he has a stuffed animal named Hobbes. But whenever he's out and about, Hobbes, it's never officially determined whether or not Hobbes is truly alive or if it's all in Calvin's imagination.
right.
But Hobbes is his best friend, and he and Hobbes get in all these hijinks together, around the neighborhood and playing with the other kids and at school and with his parents and all that stuff. And he's not a Dennis the Menace type. It's
No.
more of an introspective kind of
He's
comic. It's-
subversive.
yeah.
His
Kind of like a
attitude is very
Velveteen
subversive.
Rabbit comic.
Subversive.
Well, but it doesn't focus on that so much. It focuses more on these like thoughts that Calvin has about things and like that.
They're very
like,
philosophical
yeah,
sometimes,
it's
like
philosophical.
daydreaming and staring off into space and thinking about the nature of the universe.
Mhm.
And it's always like in juxtaposition to some childlike event,
Yeah.
or some other thing. But he also does subversive things, like he makes snowmen, but he makes them like decapitated,
Right.
and one's murdered the rest of them, and then the strip is ultimately about how disturbed the rest of the neighborhood is over him doing that.
Right.
And the parents the dad's laughing, and the mom's like, "We've got to put a stop to this." I may have that flipped, but it is kind of funny, the way, or he'll win arguments against his parents by using really bizarre logic and just flummoxing his parents.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, is that a thing you read in the comic book? I'm sorry, on in the newspaper?
Yeah, and then I loved it in the
just have the
newspaper.
books?
I loved it in the newspaper so much. I asked for the books so that I could have all the ones
So they
I
would
missed.
take the newspaper strips and they would put them in like trade books
Mhm.
that you could get every couple of years.
Yeah.
And so there's like a whole big collection. Like
Yeah.
someone was saying they have the hardback editions up there next to Homer, where it belongs.
Like there's one comic that I'll never forget where Calvin's telling Hobbes about bringing his report card home to his parents that afternoon, and he's like, "Yeah," I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, "Yeah," he goes, I got like a C. He's like, "Yeah, your parents are really over the moon about it." He's like, "Yeah," he goes, "But Calvin," he's like, "You could have gotten a B. Like I'm sure that would have been real easy. Why do you insist on keeping a D average?" He goes, "Because then I only have to get a C to impress my parents." He's like, because that way I don't have to put as much effort into impressing them.
Boy, he's lucky he didn't have my parents.
I know, right?
He would have
mine.
already been in a military school.
Yes.
Wicked Person says, iron brew is spelled like that because it contains no iron and is not brewed. Lots of caffeine. Scottish hangover remedy. Second, the bubblegum comment.
Nah, yeah.
Ooh.
Scottish hangover remedy.
Melinda's like,
Well,
caffeine?
of course, it would be
Caffeine?
something that's a hangover remedy because it's Scottish. And I mean that with all the love in the world, Scotland. If you're watching Scotland. Scott says IDW has published 5 volumes so far collecting the Spider-Man strip. They're quality books, and having 3 years of strips all at once addresses the pacing problem.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I was fixing to say, so that book's 14 pages long.
14 pages without filler.
But that's how I
I'm
consume
kidding,
a
I'm
lot
kidding.
of TV shows when they come out. Like Tim, especially, will tell me things like Mandalorian, like it's really good, Aaron, and I'll tend to wait until the season's done and just binge the season.
14 years later. So,
That's happened too, especially with the new version of Battlestar Galactica.
Yes.
It becomes longer every time he tells the story. I think it was actually 11 years a few years ago, but now it's 14.
I don't remember anymore because it was so long.
I just know I called him up at like 2 a.m. was like, "Dude, did I just watch the episode where?" And Tim's like, "I was asleep and that was 14 years ago."
Wicked Person says, Kathy made 10-year-old me think I understood everything about how all women experienced life ever.
That's dangerous.
That's unfortunate.
You should
is
never
what that
feel
is.
that way, no
Here's,
matter
here's
who you
Kathy
are.
for those of you who may not have
I remember that
experienced the
strip.
joy
I
that
do
is
remember Kathy, but it
Mhm.
was always Garfield for me. Garfield was my number one favorite.
Tim's like, forget what we're talking about. We're gonna.
Well, no, I'm just saying Garfield was always my favorite.
Well, if you're
I love
talking about
Garfield, too.
this type of thing, I would say Garfield's the only one that I liked. I liked The Far Side.
Mhm.
But you know what's funny is I don't think, and keep me honest, at
Here's
least in
Garfield.
Huntsville, Far Side didn't. They were coming out with these books and cards and calendars specific. I think it actually started as a calendar before it became comic strips. So
Garfield?
no, Far Side.
Oh.
So
Tim is not speaking to the slides. He is one step
Yeah,
ahead of
that-
every
sorry,
That
I
was
didn't.
my
I
joke
can't see
earlier.
them from over here. I don't know where we are.
I don't know that. Let me see if I took 13 pages of notes for some weird reason. So bear
So-
with me while I switch pages.
Well, I've got like 400 super chats I got to read, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Lio Convoy says Calvin and Hobbes is an unapologetic comic about the imagination and views of a young boy, including T-Rexes in F-15s.
Oh, nice. As a kid, how can you not like that?
I mean, yeah, it's Spaceman Spiff and all that stuff where he would, make up his own characters. Yeah.
Gaposaurus says my local paper seemed to have all boring strips I never wanted to read: Mary Worth, Mark Trail, Family Circus, and they did have Bloom County.
Bloom County was the one popular 80s strip I never did understand.
I didn't understand it
I
either.
never could get into it. Like I didn't hate it, but I didn't get it, so I just stopped reading it.
I skipped over it, but it did have interesting artwork, and that is one place. Even if I didn't like the comic, I would stop and stare at it, like comic strips like Doonesbury and stuff like that.
Right.
But I think the Far Side was syndicated in 1979, so when it got to Huntsville, it probably had already become greeting cards and calendars. but it had been, going on in various newspapers. It was in like 19,000 newspapers, I think, according to the article.
I just remember seeing it on calendars and cards.
I was buying it at the book fair at like the elementary school. I was buying the little books and bringing them home.
They were hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean,
my dad was like the king of having books like this, but of different things. So he had a ton of Far Side books. He was such a funny guy. People would always give him like little comic strippy things. And he also had Mad Magazine, tons of Mad Magazine. So more than reading like newspaper strips, I read a lot more Mad Magazine. And then he had like Gayon Wilson, which I have to talk about at some point, and I'll get to him in a minute after I read these 400 super chats. And the Addams Family. So those single page things that are usually collected in volumes. So I didn't read the New Yorker or Playboy, where Gayon Wilson's work was frequently published in both of those.
What's that name again?
Both highbrow and lowbrow. But he
Playboy to New Yorker.
He was prolific, and he had a lot of really surreal, bizarre stuff. But that's the kind of stuff that, of course, because of my dad, that I tended to have more of that than something like Calvin and Hobbes, which would have been actually appropriate for a child. All right, so World Made of Cardboard says, Charlie Brown hit too close to home for me to enjoy. Good grief. Me too. Oh my God. Every time I watched that, I was triggered. Like, I was just like, I want to kill Lucy. Like, I want to stab her in the face. She's so awful. Everyone was so mean to him.
Guys,
it's not funny.
Lucy abusing Charlie. I mean, I just picked a page at random, and Lucy's throwing a snowball at the back of his head.
It was always Dennis the Menace for me. I related to.
I hated the way everyone treated Charlie Brown, and I didn't understand if we were supposed to find it funny that everyone was being mean to him. But I was like, this is not okay, guys. This is not.
I agree. I used to get
okay.
furious about the football thing and.
Just everyone, they were awful children. Wicked Person says, I thought everyone experienced life just like Charlie Brown too. So does that mean that you thought everyone was bullied? And
well, that
probably means he was bullied too.
Yeah.
Well, our generation, if you like those things, comic strips and Star Wars and Star Trek and all that, you were bullied. I mean, it was just standard operating.
It was like they were correlated statistically that if you were into these things, that you related to some of these characters.
Exactly.
Not always in a happy way.
Yeah.
Monkey Boy says, Red Meat by Max Cannon, darkest strip ever.
Never heard of that one. Red Meat. I wonder what
I'm
it's
sure
about.
There's a million of these. Did anybody know why they got started?
Why a comic? No. I'm hoping you have an answer to that.
I don't really don't. I mean, that's what I'm wondering. Like, I know it's comedy, but I mean, wonder why it started in newspapers, how long, what was the reasoning?
Probably filler.
Yeah, I think that, when people were making, obviously with early prints, they had to be set, right? Typeset. So I don't know how they would have reproduced a drawing, but I'm guessing at some point they knew somebody who could draw, and they would do probably political cartoons about whatever's happening in the paper. And somebody probably just got wise to I'm going to tell a picture story, but that would be an interesting thing to go.
I imagine they started as political commentary cartoons for the most part. And also, in the original newspapers, every single photograph had to be drawn from those different etchings or whatever.
Point. So they had already figured out how to do like a wood carving or something.
Yeah. Or, is it did they intend for them to become for kids? Because later on,
probably didn't even consider that.
Was it meant for adults? Was it meant for kids?
My guess is initially
probably depends on the cartoon
for political commentary to do that.
Can you imagine the first guy that's goes up to the newspaper editor? They're doing a lot of political, cartoons and stuff in
Garfield,
the early 1800s. And he's like, "What ho? I have an idea for a cartoon." And he's like, "What is it?" He's like, "A talking cow." And they're like, "What? I don't know. No, trust me. It's going to be great.
It's going to be awesome."
It's going to be a talking cow that kills homeless people.
Glenn Garcia says, for comedy daily strips, some were multi-panel like Peanuts and Garfield, and others were single panel like Far Side and Dennis the Menace. In your opinion, which panel type would have required more time for the artist?
Well, I would think that when it came to ideas, to coalesce your idea down into one panel takes its own skill set. And I'm not saying one's harder or easier than the other. With the other one, you're setting up an arc within 4 panels, which also economy of dialogue and everything has to be very, dialogue, visuals, everything like that.
Well,
So-
and we used to see that. It's funny you bring that up because I was going to mention that you would see a change. Like
Mhm.
sometimes, to your point, Dennis the Menace used to be in a single panel, but then on Sundays,
Yeah.
he would get a multi-panel.
Right.
Well, like Family
You know.
Circus would sometimes have the single panel that was just like the
Exactly.
Where's Waldo of all the disaster in the house.
Yes.
I loved tracing those, like sleuthing around to figure out, because it was always who was it? I didn't do it or he did it. There was always a character that was an invisible person, and the mother's trying to retrace how all the dishes got broken and the footprints were on the carpet, and that would be like a one panel edition of it. But I think those would take longer in certain regards because they would usually be a lot more detailed. So even if you go to the Far Side, there's still some things in the background to pick out, or like some stuff that Melinda showed me from Addams Family. That was a very artistic and detailed single panel sort of thing sometimes.
Yeah, so can we look at so Addams Family, of course we all know the movies and stuff like that, but the comic strip was much like, it was a single panel thing. It was frequently in the New Yorker, and it's just sort of, it's got that same tone, and you can see them. We talked about this in our podcast about it, but they're sort of trying to emulate the tone of those single panel comics in the movies, which is quite a challenge because you've got like a whole movie, and to sort of like,
that's 24 single panel frames a second.
But that's why those movies sort of feel like boom, like all the time, all the way through them, because they're kind of little scenes, little scenarios that are sort of referencing back in a loving way to the original. And then because I mentioned him earlier, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Gaon Wilson's work, but he died like just a couple of years ago. But on the left, you've got one of my favorites. My dad had the book that is called And Then We'll Get Him, and it's basically all these toys in the attic, and it says one day when he's old and feeble, he'll be nostalgic and he'll come back up to see us again and to reminisce, and then we'll get him.
Sounds a lot like somebody else around here.
So
coming down to the basement,
and then we'll get them.
It would just be like these books, like this kind of book, but it would just be page after page of really dark, twisted stuff like that, like with murder and decapitations and all kinds of just really messed up stuff.
Now we know
And
why
I'm like,
you played with your
yay.
toys the way you
Well,
did.
I mean, between that and every night getting Edgar Allan Poe stories read to me, it's sort of just a recipe for disaster.
That is an interesting choice. Evermore.
How to make a goth. Anyway, Far Side, and we kind of talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
These are two of my favorite Far Sides,
love those.
with a bummer of a birthmark Hal and the kid pushing at the gifted school, pushing on the pull door.
Which we've all done that one though.
It's
We've
just-
all
Tim
done that
used to
one.
try to take bets when we would go to the gym. We would get to this one door on the way back to the parking garage.
I forgot about
And
that.
it was a hidden door that would just look like a wall panel that had a little handle, and I could never remember if it was a pull or a push. And he would never prompt me. We would just be in the middle of a conversation. He'd know if I was going to have a good or a bad evening if I remembered whether to push or pull on this door.
And this was years, people. This was not like over a
I
month.
would still
This
do it
was
today.
years.
My brain is such that it would just randomly select whether I would remember that or not. I can't help it.
We mentioned Dennis the Menace earlier. Pull that one up real quick. So there's like a single panel Dennis the Menace comic. And fun fact, Dennis the Menace was a completely different looking character. I think he was even unrelated in England. There was a Dennis the Menace in England
Really?
that looked totally different, that was not related to this Dennis the Menace in their newspaper strips.
Was
That's
he named-
kind of cool.
Was
Actually,
he named
Didn't I know
Thomas
that.
the Bother?
No, his name was Dennis the Menace.
Okay, that was good.
That was
Thomas
really good.
the Bother.
You guys are assholes.
I thought it was pretty good. Proud of myself.
So I'm just gonna start going down our list. So BC was.
I
another
loved
comic
BC
that,
too.
It's also good for headaches.
It is great for headaches. If you are a northerner or someone who's not from America, you probably don't know what it is, but like I've gone to the north, like I've been in like Boston, for example, and I'll take out a BC powder and start taking it in a restaurant, and everyone in there is like, because it's like this white powder. I'm like, guys, you don't eat cocaine. Just saying.
Yes, please tell us more. So BC is a character's name, and there
It is?
Yeah, there are a lot. It's also a reference to the time period that it's set in. They're cavemen.
You don't say.
There's a whole big cast of characters.
I feel like I'm. Yeah.
Sorry, that was a little.
Tell me more about it.
I just thought it was interesting because I had forgotten that BC was a name of a character in the comic strip, even leading to a character named AD later on. Like it was all sort of tongue in cheek, being silly. You're looking at me like I'm crazy or like I'm just being mean trying to explain this, but that jumped out at me when I was reading the background on this earlier. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave before I get hurt. I am wearing a Cranberries t-shirt. This is very dangerous.
Well, you had to wear it. It was the much.
This is the much talked about space gift that didn't belong to anyone for a few minutes and nearly ended someone's life.
Oh me.
Beetle Bailey. I remember this comic
Bailey
so much.
Yes.
I don't. So when you were talking about the guy who has the hat that's pulled down over his eyes, I'm like Beetle Bailey.
Mm-hmm.
So not Beetle Bailey though, that was Andy Capp. But this also is another guy who's.
Well, that's a helmet.
I think
It's still a hat. A helmet's a hat.
But is it?
I wonder if they started that one because of Gomer Pyle.
I can't remember if it was. I want to say it was a Vietnam era comic, but it might go all the way back to World War II.
Yeah,
it's hard to remember.
Don't know.
Aaron's gonna look it up for us.
I'll see if it's even in my notes. We'll see how good I did scratching.
And then we've got Bloom County,
the comic that never made sense to me as a child. I'm sure if I read it now, it'd be great, but I didn't get it as a kid.
Yeah, I would always just be like, what? And I think I didn't pull any. So I always get Bloom County and Doonesbury confused because I didn't really get either one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So there was one that had like Billy and the Boingers, and they put out like an actual album, and it was like "You Stink, But I Love You." And I was playing it earlier, but it's from a comic book, and it was
the
like
clip was
it was
by Adam Curry.
It was a 7-inch
with his big hair.
So my dad had the book of whatever that's from. I think it's Bloom County, and it was a book like this, and inside perforated there was a
plastic
flexi 7-inch.
I hated those.
And you could literally play it on your record player, and it was that.
Oh, I do remember those.
Do you remember those?
Yes.
And you'd tear it out, and it was
wow.
like, and it was square, but it,
And when it was spinning, it would cut you.
You are really going back on that one.
Yeah.
I have not thought about that since the 80s.
You make me sick. Way-oh, way-oh, way-oh. You make me sick. Wow, but I love you.
And they'd be different colors, like
really
deep red.
This one was
something.
a knot. It was just black. But
wow, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah. So that was trippy and weird.
And the Beetle Bailey notes I had didn't say time of the era. It just said American Army base on the. I just grabbed the first couple of paragraphs from Wikipedia.
Thank you, Evander. Evander sent me the origins of comics.
Brian Dillingham says,
like this is a personal accomplishment.
I didn't think I was, but
Brian says, I'm sure Charlie Brown grew up to be Jigsaw. Well, that's
oh my gosh. I mean, he certainly had the background for it.
Yeah.
There's a Family, or is it American Dad, where they have little short clips of Charlie Brown losing it and shooting up the.
Well, that's when he goes back and he was like, I didn't mean for stupid OD, man.
Well, there was that, what is it, College Humor that did Charlie Brown coming back and killing everybody?
Oh, that must be.
That was hilarious.
Family Guy.
You should go watch that if you haven't seen it. It's great.
It's rough, dude.
It's awesome. Wicked Person says, early strips were surreal. The Little Kid, Little Nemo in Slumberland, Crazy Cat, The Cats and Jammer Kids, Mutt and Jeff, Little Orphan Annie.
Mutt and Jeff. Oh, wow. That's one I haven't thought about in a long time.
Well, can I just say, when you were looking for pictures, you were like, there are some shots of these comic strips I don't want to put up on the screen today. Like, given the amount of time that's passed and in some cases just recent political stuff that's happened. But I found like some 1919, 1920s comic books that just the names of them were like, oh no, this isn't going on the list.
Right.
I'm not reading that on a live stream on YouTube.
World Made of Cardboard says, favorite joke from comic strip, Far Side, Midvale School for the Gifted. That's the one I just showed a few minutes ago.
Yes.
Scott Knudsen says, if any of you fully grown adults want to cry, look up the story of Calvin on his deathbed talking to Hobbes one last time. Have Kleenex ready.
Wow, that's
rough.
That's a downer.
Yeah, see, this comic always seemed, when I said Velveteen Rabbit, it was like, because it kind of gives you that weird, gross, I'm gonna cry feeling, because like Toy Story too.
Yeah, no.
Do you know what I'm saying? It's got that whatever that
Jesse
feeling
story.
is. We don't have a name for it in English. There may be a word for it in another language, but whatever that feeling is that makes you like really sad. It's almost nostalgia, but not quite. I just always avoided this because it seemed like that's what it was.
Another one like that is Mutts. It was in newspapers, and it was actually most of the time a really fun story about a cat and a dog who were friends, and it was more like they were the people
for sadness.
It was more like they were the people, and their owners or their adults were like their pets, but they didn't speak around them. But when they were by themselves, they would talk. They would communicate through thought bubbles if the grown-ups were around. But for the most part, it was just fun adventures. But occasionally there would be a story that touched on real issues that animals face, and it would be kind of rough for a turn. So
you don't say.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
always fun talking about this with you for sure.
Like the after-school specials of the 70s.
Not quite that wrong.
Scott Hughes says, anyone remember Ripley's Believe It or Not strip?
I do.
Oh, yes, Scott.
Yeah,
good one.
they would do
I
the
saw
kind of
that
like
one.
infotainment stuff where they would tell you all these like weird
facts.
Yeah.
And they would do some kind of weird animation in that Ripley style.
Yeah.
From like the early 20th.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I forgot about that, Scott. Good call out.
Mm-hmm.
Good call out.
Salvador says, not really a newspaper strip, but since Farside was just mentioned, Melinda, if you haven't heard of him before, I think you'd really like Edward Gorey. Yeah, I'm familiar with Edward Gorey. He's kind of in that triumvirate of Gan Wilson, the other name, the Charles Adams, and then Edward Gorey. They all kind of have that same offbeat, slightly surrealist type of skewed view of everything. Edward Gorey's tone is a little different. My favorite is Gan Wilson, but yeah, he's also great. His artwork's really interesting. If you like that kind of offbeat stuff, you should check him out.
I always like New Yorker comics, even if they weren't about things I cared about. They just had an interesting style most of the time. There was something to pick out somewhere in there.
Every time I think of the New Yorker comics, I just think of that time that Elaine on Seinfeld was trying to write a comic.
I haven't got to that one yet.
Was,
I've been binging through. I'm in season 4.
She writes this like dumb thing that she's going to submit to the New Yorker because her idea is that all of their cartoons are just ridiculous. And so it's just like she thinks it's great, and Jerry's like, it's not good. It's not.
Well, he's an expert on what's good and funny.
Well, he certainly thinks so, doesn't he?
Without a doubt.
He'll tell you why.
Did you ask him?
No, I would
you
never.
Don't ever ask Jerry Seinfeld why he thinks
Don't
it's funny.
ask Jerry Seinfeld anything.
You will get an answer
Nope.
over lunch with coffee.
All right, so I'm finally caught up on my super chats. What have I not talked about that's on this table aside from how awesome Garfield Halloween specials are?
Oh, and
that is a good one.
So here's the thing about John Davis. He, whenever they would approach him about like coming up with content for those, either the Christmas stuff or the Halloween special,
Is
and
it Greg Davis or John Davis?
It's just John Davis.
Okay.
Yeah, it's short for Jonathan, right? So this is before he was the lead singer of Korn.
Throw the iron
So
brew at him.
We all remember the Halloween special being like really scary. And the thing about John is that he always wanted things for kids to be like actually scary or actually upsetting. Like the Christmas one. I don't know if you've seen the Garfield Christmas special.
Yeah.
But it is like a tearjerker.
Isn't that what was it? 9 Lives of.
It was the one with Grandma and
Yes.
how Grandpa died, and she's sitting there and she's lonely and she's missing Grandpa. And she's sitting in the rocking chair, and you know he's just sitting there with her, and it's kind of Calvin and Hobbesy in the way where you're just like, ah.
Well, it's the one where he did, I think, the 9 Lives of Garfield or whatever. And he went way off, and it was the whole thing about
that was a different one, but yeah, it was
with
just,
the girl who had the cat that grew up with her and died playing the piano.
Yeah,
or whatever. It's just
that's
like,
a different one.
ugh!
But John
It's
Davis,
like they
you'll
went
notice
all
there's
the
a
way
theme
dark.
with all of those
Perfect.
Garfield specials that you see. They're all kind of dark, and it's because you know you don't see as much of it in like the books, the comic strips, the little 3-panel ones, because they're just kind of funny and whatever. But the things that he's creating there are like, I don't know. It's almost like in a Mr. Rogers-esque kind of way. Just go with me on this. He kind of treated kids like they were people.
Yeah.
And I always,
had the
that
full
resonated
spectrum
with
of
me
feeling.
so much. It's why I love Garfield so much. And I don't know about you. I know it was a big fad in the 80s, but like the cartoon versions of Garfield is what really made me love Garfield.
Well, the storylines, to your point, had very serious undertones.
yeah.
Even if it was funny. I mean, Garfield in Paradise.
Mhm.
It's the guy who killed himself in the volcano with the car. You're like, oh my gosh.
Well,
You're
yeah,
like,
a couple of years ago on
Yeah.
I think it was on Amazon, they had all of the
them, yes, they
specials. Now
did.
you can go and check and see if they still have them, but they
could
had
probably
all
rent
of them
them
where
if
you
they-
could like watch them for free on Prime. So they're definitely worth seeing if you haven't seen them.
So
It's
my
great.
favorite Garfield strip that was in one of these books is probably on the table is the one that came around Halloween, where he's sitting there and he's like, it's October something, it's almost Halloween, and he starts to be like, this is a time when cats become fear. You know, he starts describing.
I am
how
fear.
scary
He gets
things,
all, like,
and he gets all like
puffed up
and crazy eyed, and his teeth are out, and then he sees himself in the mirror, he freaks out, and he runs and he hides in his bed.
I remember
And he's like,
that
"Oh
one.
my, I'm not coming out till that guy's gone." And to that end, there was an interesting thing going on Reddit for a while, where there was a subreddit called "I'm Sorry, John," where people would draw Garfield things, but in a horror vein, where Garfield was basically like using John as a sock puppet. I mean, it was gruesome, but it was always this very surreal, terrifying take on like, "I'm sorry, John," and it was like he had tentacles into John's brain, and John was just like going through it. It was. You'll have to trust me on that
Well,
one.
cats do manipulate us quite often.
It took it to a weird place, but it
So-
was interesting.
So Jeff says, there was a Lego strip called Bricks in the Middle. Tim, are you a fan of Hawaiian shirts? Asking for a friend.
No, not necessarily,
You like
because I
bowling
look.
shirts more.
I do like bowling shirts, but I am picky about them. But
So don't
you know,
produce bowling shirts for Tim. Tim
Yes,
will choose
no.
his own bowling shirts.
yes, I buy my own shirts. Thank you.
All of his
Just saying.
shirts are purchased by Tim.
Thank you,
I'm
Castlemania
wearing a
Games.
dangerous shirt.
Just because I had to buy tailored shirts because I have no neck. Me and Michael were laughing about this because if I buy a shirt that I can actually, but like, you see how tight I can't button the top button of this shirt.
Jim Davis, sorry.
Jim David, yeah.
I was
So
like, that can't be right because John is the owner.
if I get a shirt I can button the collar on, it hangs to my knees because my neck is like,
And they only make them long.
yeah,
True
it's
story, if Tim takes his shirt off, his head just floats over.
yeah,
his
it's
shoulders.
very
There's like an
disturbing.
empty space.
I am Ram Man. I mean, it's just the way it is. I have to accept it.
Joseph Dickerson says, great topic. And for those who do not know, on gocomics.com, you can read thousands of comic strips for free online, classic
Oh,
strips
really?
and new ones, updated daily. It's amazing.
I will have to check
thank you,
that
sir.
out. I did not know that.
For those of you who are making connections right now, Joseph is the genius behind the Freeze Chamber playset.
Oh,
Oh,
cool.
nice.
Michael
Yeah.
and I were
Very
just looking
cool.
at the new things.
Dude, you are.
Talking about.
I envy your skill set. I wish I was as skilled as you with a 3D printer. I mean,
I can make a 3D printer print, but I can't go from idea.
I mean, you were
file level
like
print on a 3D printer.
So-
like a Mozart with a 3D printer, my friend.
So my apologies for saying John Davis. I knew something didn't sound right,
Yeah.
but I'm really bad with names. And so I was like, I know it's a 3-letter word, but it's Jim Davis. So-
William has a good point. I forgot about Prince Valiant. Prince Valiant was another serialized comic where it kind of
Oh yeah,
and it was one of those ongoing ones.
and
like
it was
Mary
kind of
Worth.
very lighthearted, wasn't it?
I recall it being,
Or was it serious?
I recall it being a medieval
Was it?
adventure.
Okay.
Yeah.
It looks. So Jody's stream will be delayed by 30 minutes, so we can, if you'd like, continue to our full time. Just
I didn't prepare enough material.
No, I
No.
think we're good. It's stopping at 3.
I hate all of you, and I don't want to sit near you anymore.
No, that's not what I meant. What I meant was
I'm
it'll
kidding.
give everybody a chance to get up, go to the bathroom.
I actually have something I have to go do. So,
Right.
but I mean, y'all can keep going. I'm
But it's
leaving.
just the bathroom. You should have
Wow.
gone before we got started.
It's not the bathroom.
I know. It's-
I have other things, important things,
Okay.
things for top men.
I'm not one
Wow.
of those.
Top men.
I am not a top man. So if you see up here in the front,
You're
there
supposed
is
to
a
talk. It's
there
a
is
live
a
stream.
Peanuts book. I can't remember. It may be laying down.
It's there's one right here in the middle. One
And
in
there
the
was
middle.
another one that has a torn cover.
Yep.
The torn cover one, I found it yesterday and we were getting ready for this. I noticed that the publishing date on that was 1957. So that might be the oldest comic strip book that I have. And it was one that my mother and her brothers and sister grew up reading. And I ended up with it either through thievery or cleverness. I don't know. It just sort of ended up with a bunch of other stuff I have. I also have a bunch of encyclopedias from that time period, which are really interesting to read through.
I can
Almost
only
like
imagine.
the knowledge of humanity frozen in time. Like this is what we thought this stuff was. It's
Oh my
kinda fun.
God, I had the best set of childcraft encyclopedias as a kid. And they were from like either the late 60s, I think it was late 60s, but they had like each volume, if you know what childcraft is, it had like volumes on different stuff. So like my favorite one was the literature one. So it was like all poetry and stories and stuff like that. So it had like Alfred Noyes, the highwayman, with illustrations of like the ghosts on the moors and stuff like that. Can you tell I was a little just,
Yes.
I mean,
We couldn't afford
But
encyclopedias, so
well, no, this was something that I don't know where they came from. They were hand-me-downs from someone that I got. Because I mean,
'Cause-
obviously, it was like 20 years old by the time I
Yeah.
got them. But
can we talk about how expensive encyclopedias were in the 80s? I mean,
well,
get a
Childcraft
volume.
was, you
I
know,
mean,
not-
well, it didn't matter.
For
It
it.
was,
I mean, it was a financial decision.
it
that you
was
made
a big
with
financial
your
decision.
Significant other.
Yeah.
KB, we will be doing another studio tour update at some point. The first thing I have to do is get it clean for the studio tour and get some
you should
things
do
redone.
a really disorganized studio tour where you just show the real studio.
Oh, I don't want to do that.
Oh yes,
And it's just-
Studio
I love
tour
that tone. Oh, I don't want to do
Studio
that.
tour unplugged. You know, like Nirvana did.
Behind the scenes for top tier patrons only, you can see all of our junk that is
Well,
everywhere all the
I'll leave
time.
my sleeping pallet out, you know, so they can see where I actually live.
The
and
hammocks.
sleep.
Wow.
The over the flag.
Yeah. I'll be like, you turn that light off, Michael. I'm trying to get some shut eye over here.
It's messed up.
Michael, you're gonna trip over my poop jar.
Scott says, I love in Misty in Space Mutiny, the bit in the beginning with the bots complaining about their outdated encyclopedias.
Yeah.
I do too.
Yeah.
He's like, I miss complaining about the outdated ones already.
So I got another question that comes from all of this. Is I had a lot of fun going back and trying to remember all these old comic strips that I used to read. What do we have now that's anything like that? I know that there are still newspapers being distributed, but a lot
We
of us
have the
don't.
internet.
Memes.
That's all we have.
I think memes.
But I guess, but the newspaper used to be like a curated source of them, and we all just talked about how much we didn't like the selection that was in our paper. We had to live with the one we had. I was just curious.
Well, I don't know about
I have
that.
my favorite cartoonists, and I will go to their websites and I will read that stuff. But there just isn't sort of like a pre-curated list that I'm aware of that just says,
Yeah.
hey, here's a list of what's hot right now. Everybody knows about the oatmeal and XKCD if they're a computer programmer, and various others. Frog Pants does a lot of good stuff. He's the guy behind Film Sack and a lot of other great podcasts. He's also a cartoonist, and he's got some good work out there.
I'll freely admit that my love of comic strips has evolved as far as the internet goes to several things like Paperback Paradise.
I was about to say, Michael just likes to look at Paperback Paradise.
It's like
That's
the greatest thing.
Real comic strips, though, the way they
I
produce
mean,
it on
yeah.
Instagram at a regular
Yes.
pace. But you found that through. I guess it's just part of the meme economy now. We just
Mhm.
sort of have to be plugged in. We have to be watching, like Tim said, memes, and then from there we'll be like, hey, who drew that, and follow it back to it.
Follow the breadcrumbs.
I also really love the He-Man show. It's a page on Facebook. I'm sure they have an Instagram, and they do this comic strip that they use all the filmation stills from, and it's not safe for work, but it's called Oh the Humanity, and it's all
the
these
best
like
ones are.
jokey,
Have you seen the new one, Life Lessons from Skeletor?
Is it from the same
I've seen
people?
that.
It's
Yeah.
the same people, but it's
Oh,
hilarious.
My favorite Facebook page is called I Don't Like Anything, I Don't Go Outside. And
but we're not
every
talking
single
about reality.
everything that I see on there, I'm like, oh, that's true.
It's almost comforting.
Oh,
isn't it?
that's true. Like, and I send it to you guys, and you're like, oh my God, that's dark. And I'm just laughing
We're
like
just
at 3 a.m.
Are
Like,
you okay?
yeah, but it's great. If you're like super morose, you should check it out.
Mhm.
For sure.
Bringing down the room since 1992, everybody.
Well, we're almost out of time. We've got 10 minutes left. Do we just call it or do we keep going?
Jeez.
I was thinking about.
We're
Look,
ready
this
to
is
go
an off
much?
Saturday.
All right,
This
look.
is an off Saturday for me. I'm like,
Look, we get
You
that
know.
you're a top man.
no, I'm going to see top men. I'm not the top man.
That's not the way
I
that you
said
phrased
top-
it. It
No,
sounded a
I
lot
said
like you
top
were a
men.
top man.
No, I said top men.
Maybe you think of yourself as more than one man, and both of you were top.
I'm
I think
very
of Michael
important.
as a top man.
This is working on so many
I
levels.
know.
I think of Melinda as a top man.
Thank you.
That's true. I think of myself as a top hat.
I too have power. I
Even though
don't-
you're female.
I don't even have a penis. It's pretty impressive.
Michael's like, can we just stop?
And we just lost 5 viewers from that comment. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, everyone.
Sorry, my bad.
They must have had top men to go see.
Mm.
hmm
Very important. Very, very.
No,
important.
I do think that comic strips have evolved in ways like that. Obviously, there are still ones we can follow and whatnot, but yeah, mediums change, and for me, like you said, I don't really know if Paperback Paradise and Oh the Humanity are memes, but they are in that they're
Realm.
derived from that realm.
They're things that you see, they're very short and they give you a little chuckle.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, memes is a good
I
Like,
just
and
don't- this is the Gen X in me. I don't like the idea that memes are replacing comic strips. I like a meme for what a meme is, even though I think it's an abuse of the word meme.
Mm-hmm.
But I still want a comic strips like what we used to get with Far Side and other things. And there are people doing that, like the Oatmeal, and you guys probably know hundreds and hundreds of other very talented. It's almost like iTunes came around and everybody was making music. Now the internet's here. Everybody's publishing in comic strips. Some of them are good, some of them aren't. But there's a lot out there to go find. But I haven't found any sort of like syndicated, curated sort of list of this is what you want to read every Sunday kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this gets back to when we were kids in the analog world, everything was in print, and print was something you did. So like we would take those little paperback Garfield books to school, and we would take our
Yes.
Far Side books to
Yes.
school and read them on the trip back and forth.
share them
and
on the bus. With
share
our
them on the
friends.
bus
Yeah.
and talk about them. And Calvin and Hobbes was like a thing. And so I know
never share.
Wednesday
things.
Addams, I get it, but
You never
Like-
loan books; you just give them to people.
No.
I didn't
Kinda
loan
like
them out.
DVDs.
I didn't loan them
But-
out, but the kids would see them when I was reading them, and we'd laugh about
You
them.
look
together.
with your eyes, Betty. You don't touch my stuff.
But now that even is these
I really wish I'd met you when I was like 11.
Calvin
you
and
don't.
Hobbes, like now Calvin
You
and
don't.
Hobbes, for
You'd have gotten
example, is
hurt.
in this hardbound volume, like a prestige format.
Yes.
So people in our generation who are now older will go out and buy the finished volume to have on their library shelf. But yeah, it's IDW is printing big volumes of dailies from different strips. I have a lot of the Dick Tracy ones and Superman ones.
Are they yellow?
Huh?
Yellow?
No, these are
they were all
these are black and
yellow.
whi- these are in black and white.
Oh, yellow. Michael
So-
French
But did it have the gradient
collects
instead of- 'cause
the
remember,
lights.
If you
Yeah.
didn't have yellow, you had like a gradient, weird gradient.
Right,
to his
yeah,
head or
yeah.
whatever.
Wicked Person says Garfield minus Garfield.com is Garfield strips with Garfield entirely edited out, so John is just insane.
That's why we said John Davis. We were thinking of John,
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Garfield's
yeah.
owner.
And I was thinking of the
Yes,
lead singer
Scott,
of Korn.
Buffy, yes. I'm all
Is that a reference to Buffy?
Yes.
really? Are you messing with me?
Well, I mean, I think that's where the Hellmouth is.
Yes, I'm heavily back into Buffy right now, rewatching. It's been about 10 years, and so I'm watching for my 8th time going through Buffy.
I'm shaking my head at him. Not
I
you.
know, it's fine. I
What did I do wrong this time? Getting more facts right. That's what's happening. You guys got to deal with it.
You did research. I am so impressed with you today.
Jody
You got a whole thing of research.
pointing
over there.
out that the Chasing 80s crew stream is still delayed by 30 minutes, so sorry, I have a catch in my throat.
It's okay.
Wolfie says, my dad loved Prince Valiant. Amazed at how much real estate that comic got in color.
Mhm.
Shocked to find out it dates back to 1937.
Yep.
There is apparently a Robin Hood comic from the same time. Great.
Ah.
topic.
That does not surprise
Well,
me.
I have the full Prince Valiant animated series from the late 80s,
Is
early
that
90s.
related?
Yes.
Oh,
It
okay.
is,
You're
it
gonna
is
have to find the Robin Hood now
Mhm.
for your
Well,
video.
Is that the
Oh.
super Christian one?
Prince Valiant?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
There
I
was
think that
one
was
that we were
Family
watching.
Circus.
No.
It
It
was-
was something. No, I know what you're talking
I
about.
could be
It
wrong.
was.
It always had.
But
No, I don't think
I'm
you
thinking
are.
of something else though.
Okay.
It's more like a. I'll have to come up with it. It's sort of like one of those that was on the Christian Family Channel or whatever it was called, but it was like an actually really good cartoon, but it wasn't for once about the Bible times.
Yeah, well, Prince Valiant's not about the Bible times. Prince
No, I
Valiant-
know, but this is like
It's about cutting people's up and
It's-
cutting their heads off time.
I don't know. It's some sort of adventure
It's
thing.
about
Anyway.
horses going nay, and then you going whack.
They're running them through with a sword tie.
Yeah. Head on a pike.
Timothy says, "Don't know who Betty is, but Melinda's working through some stuff. Don't touch my stuff.
Perpetually.
I don't." Mm-mm.
I'm in danger.
So Drew says, "Have you seen the Calvin and Hobbes documentary, Dear Mr. Watterson?"
I have not seen that. I
don't
would
even
love
know
to
that
watch it.
It
though.
seems like something you would have seen.
Yeah, the last documentary I started watching, I haven't finished, is the one that just came out on HBO on Brittany Murphy and her untimely demise.
That sounds cheerful.
It was
Bjorn,
not. It was not a cheerful way to start the day.
Bjorn, my favorite Dick Tracy strip is probably the one where he goes after. I always get these confused.
Was
It's
it the
like,
guy with the big face that looked like bricks?
they all were weird looking. They
What
were
about
all.
the guy whose head looked like a nail?
That's the Tick.
Oh,
No,
okay,
no.
okay.
So it's.
What about the guy whose face looked like the front seat of a Bronco? Okay, sorry, I'll stop.
I think my favorite one is where he goes after Pruneface, because Pruneface is a Nazi spy, and that always resonated with me.
I
So
almost said the one whose face looked like a prune.
Kieran says Buffy is crying out for a decent transfer to Blu-ray, but the problem is,
oh, they
There is a
botched it
problem.
up
go ahead.
so bad.
Tell us the story
There
of
is a
the
problem with
botched Buffy.
So Buffy
Blu-ray.
was shot.
botched
Buffy was shot for 4:3 broadcast full screen TV.
But
However,
it was shot on film.
film is not the issue.
No, I know. I'm saying.
Let me finish. You asked me to tell the story. I'm going to tell the story.
Woo! Jesus
Wow.
Christ.
Well,
This is why people think you hate me, by the way.
oh my God.
that. He does.
I don't hate
Real
you.
quick, tell me you love me.
I love you.
Oh. Could you feel it, guys?
Nobody likes being asked to tell a story and then immediately being interrupted. Nobody likes that. Nobody gets a thrill out of it. Oh God, I hope she interrupts me. I love being interrupted. No one says that.
Are you sure?
I'm going to tell the story now.
So it was framed in 4:3, right?
Yes,
Okay.
but it was shot on 1/7/8 film, which is wider. So when they decided, oh, hey, it wasn't shot on 1/7/8 in the hopes that one day it would be 1/7/8. They always intended to cut out the left and right side. So when they were filming it, they used the viewfinder to make sure they knew what the boundaries were. And then right on the edges of the square of the frame were lighting stands and other camera guys and all kinds of stuff. But when the idiots who weren't working with Joss Whedon decided, oh, we need to make this high def and we want it to fill the new widescreen TVs, they just dumped the raw film right there onto the internet or Apple TV or whatever it was. And you can literally now see the other cameramen in the scenes, like and lighting stands and all kinds of stuff.
Some guy eating potato chips.
It is garbage. It is hot garbage.
There's got to be a place for that, though.
How does that get fixed?
Some kind of drinking game.
The only way
That-
here's the thing. If they want to fix it, they have one of two options. They either go back to the original 4:3 master, and then they cut the top and the bottom off to make a simulated widescreen, or which is bad enough because you're losing image. Or they have to go in and rotoscope out every single thing that shows up on the left and right.
I would much rather have a transfer that is 4:3 with black bars on the right and left.
Yes.
Just crop and just accept that was the format
Right.
that it was distributed to me in, but have the high def in the.
Yes.
But what's interesting is, so like if you watch on Amazon, which is where Buffy is on Amazon right now, as is Angel. So I'm in season 4 of Buffy, so I'm doing the Buffy Angel, like in the order of air.
Are you doing like the Hatchet list kind of thing?
Well, I just know because some of them have crossovers.
Well,
but
I'm not
anyway,
saying there
so
is one for it, but you're watching them where they.
yes,
fall all
I'm
the
watching
time.
them when they were aired.
I'm gonna
So
quit
anyway,
talking.
there's like Buffy is cropped, so it's I think it actually is in 4:3, so it doesn't have all that extra stuff in that particular one that's on Amazon.
No, because
But
it fills the screen.
Yes, because it's zoomed in.
So they did what you
So
said.
I can change the aspect ratio on the TV and change it to 4:3, but the bars are like gray. So if they were black, then I would be able to watch it in 4:3 the way it was intended, and it's fine. So instead, it zooms it in, so it's cropped funny. So it does fill my widescreen, but you can tell that it's like there are
It's
some
just not
shots where
right.
it's like his head is like going. You can only see from like Oz's nose down, and he's the one talking,
like
and it's
pan and scan or
weird.
something.
And then I switch over to Angel. And Angel is like what you're talking about, where it's the widescreen transfer that's got. So I literally filmed a little 7-second clip and put it on my Facebook the other day of like you can see the cameraman as Angel's throwing this guy
The
across
second
the room.
cameraman, yeah.
Or someone's throwing Angel across the room, and it's just like the second cameraman, and you can see the flash even in the back because it's so wide that you can. And it's like the cameraman's going like this, and I'm like, oh my god, this is weird. All right, I'm gonna stop talking about this now. Wicked Person says, ever play the ColecoVision PC BC's Quest for Tires game or its sequel?
No, never did.
Never heard of it.
Quest for Tires?
Well, they were obsessed with wheels.
The wheels.
in
It's a
PC.
Dillinghammism. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Was that the top man?
Yes.
It
It was Keith Edwards. So
oh, that is a top man.
yes, I mean, you know.
Keith.
Are we doing something with Keith?
No.
He
But I
calls
would.
Tim every Saturday to talk about Alabama football.
Oh, well, that's important.
but-
Right in the middle of the live stream.
If-
Scott,
Roll
Keith wanted-
Tide, roll
If
Tide.
Keith wanted to do something, I'd be up for it.
Scott says,
Okay.
here's one from the memory banks, Wizard of Id. Did I not pull up Wizard of Id?
I don't think we did pull it
So-
up, but
so
it's
real
definitely
quick,
on the list.
Let me do that. Gotta go
You
back
did get a
here.
picture for it.
I have a picture. It's at the end of the list. So yeah. Yeah. Wizard of Id. I do actually remember this comic in my paper.
It's a fun one.
I enjoyed it.
It started in 1964, and I believe this is one that the family has continued to work on. So it's been passed down from the original artist to his sons, to their son. That happens fairly often, I think, in some of these syndicated newspaper ones. The other one that I wanted to throw out as an honorable mention is On the Fast Track, which you may have only seen if you were in like the Southeast Alabama area. It is by a Huntsville. He was born in California, but he moved to Huntsville, Alabama, kind of lived and grew up there. Ended up being an editor at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, but he produced this comic strip, which was just kind of about corporate life in Huntsville. And a lot of the characters apparently in it were not intentionally, for legal reasons, based on actual managers who worked at the company he worked at, to the point where people that I may or may not know remembered actually like knew who those characters were when they saw them in the strip. So it was just kind of a weird local thing. I enjoyed reading that one as a kid just because of the weird tie to my hometown.
Cool.
Thanks.
Nicely done.
I appreciate it.
Jason, we did talk about Dilbert right before the stream. It started in '89, and
I do love Dilbert. That is a funny comic strip.
it's
Mhm.
funny, but it's depressing because it's so true to everything that we've lived since then.
It's
It
kind of
was-
like Office Space in that way.
Yeah.
It was a funny before I got into that world. And now it's like, yep, nailed it. Yeah, you're right about that one.
All right. So hours up. Everyone's telling us to stop talking. I can feel the love.
People
So-
are telling us to stop talking.
Well, they're like, hours up, get out. Everybody get out.
One person said it was getting weird.
So
What was getting weird?
probably something I said.
Probably me.
Oh, well, that's hey. So yeah, well, this was only supposed to be an hour because this leads right into the Gen X Toys Geek stream with Chasing 80s Toys.
There may be a little delay while they finish some technical stuff. This is going to be one of the first times they've gotten all of this group of people together on the same video chat. So bear with them. I know they're working on laying some new cables across the oceans between them, making them work. So they'll be there.
Good
You
deal.
know what
posted-
though? Jody used to give me so much beef about how I did the technology here. I'm just going to be like, really, Jody? A 30-minute delay?
Yeah,
I just
that 30
posted the
minutes delay.
link in the chat. So be sure to go ahead as soon as we end and just click on it and wait for them to start. I'm sure it'll be a fun stream to watch. We'll be watching it on the road, wherever it is that we're going to do Top Guy stuff.
Yes.
I don't know what the hell that
I hope
means.
it's not Top Golf.
God.
I can't do Top Golf
Kill
with
me
Top
now.
Guys.
Kill
It's
me
just too
now.
much. But you
Um,
know, that 30-minute delay is so that Jody produces a stream that has he's nailed all of that. So I know that when it goes live, all of that stuff that he's talked to us about behind the scenes will be absolutely
And if it's not, you better look out, buddy.
we are
there's going to be some IMs coming your way.
That
we
is
are going to be
100%
back
true.
next Saturday on our regular schedule, reestablishing the every other Saturday properly next Saturday.
Because
and
that's important for some reason. But we don't
would
know.
you would
I'm-
you be
I'm
part of the
complaining.
community and not resistant to it?
We do what we want.
I'm gonna go take stuff down.
So yeah, so we'll be back next Saturday with the topic, which is, Melinda,
What?
Harrowing life
the topic we
experiences.
came up with for next Saturday.
I don't remember that. Was that more than 5 minutes ago?
I know, Michael. It is about our favorite place to sit while on the train
No.
in New York.
No, it's the one you came up
Yeah,
with.
you know, everybody brings a thing to the table that they.
Oh,
That's-
that wasn't a
that's a
topic.
segment.
That was just a segment to go in all of our
That's just
shows
a thing
going
for us
forward.
to do on it. So stay tuned.
I thought
for
it was
the
a
actual
topic.
No.
We do also have an exciting new segment that's going to be a part of next week's show. We will announce the topic that we're going to discuss soon. We don't have that quite yet, but we do know one small part of what that's going to be. Melinda, did you want to bring that up now or make it a surprise next week?
I was just gonna make it a surprise, but we can say it.
No,
It's-
surprise is fine. Make them anticipate.
Thank you, Drew. He says, any fans of Heathcliff?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love
Especially that
Heathcliff.
fishbone thing that's always in each episode.
I still did prefer Garfield, but yes, Heathcliff was definitely a thing.
It
It
was,
existed.
and he was always finding fish bones in the bottom of garbage cans.
Mhm.
I remember that very clearly.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We appreciate all of your attendance and those of you who sent super chats. We are looking forward to seeing you again back on schedule next week. Until then, goodbye from us.
Have a great whatever.
Saturday.
Bye.